Hello. Today I wanted to go through a little hip opening sequence. You can either use this at any point of your day, or you can add this to a sequence, maybe even after you do a few sun salutations, so your body can be warm. So, what you need to possibly have two blocks. If you don't have blocks, you can always use really high books. Maybe get a stack of books so you can place your hands on something. But you don't necessarily have to have blocks. It's just good if you find it a little difficult to touch the floor. So let's just start in our seated position, Sukhanasana. I'm sitting on the block right now, and my hips are towards the edge of the block, and I bring my feet really close towards the block. So the closer I bring my feet to the blocks, maybe my knees can fall a little bit closer towards the floor. So we sit up really nice and straight, and so even by sitting here, you'll start to maybe feel your hips open. Place your right hand onto your hip, left hand out to the side, and just use your right hand to traction. It's like I'm trying to pull the femur out of the bone as I rotate chest up. Allow your head to just fall over towards the left side to feel a stretch also in the left side of your neck. Focusing on taking really deep inhales through the nose and exhale through the nose. Coming back to center, and just switch sides. A lot of people have tight hips. I have tight hips. So it's always good to kind of get into your hips, place your left hand onto your thigh, lean over towards the right, rotate your chest up towards the ceiling as you take your shoulder, your ear towards your right shoulder. Since the hips take all the center of gravity from our weight, and we tend to have a lot of tightness in our hips, and some people say that you hold on stress into your hips also. Back to center. So your left foot is in front. Step your left foot forward. Keeping your foot flexed, we call this dorsiflexion. Either have your foot in front of your body, or if you like for it to be out to the side, you go for it. Begin to walk your hands forward. As you walk your hands forward, it's like you're moving your hips side to side like you're walking. And as you do this, begin to notice if you have any interesting sensations in any part of your body. And then focus on your breath. Walk your hands over the left leg, still moving your hips side to side. So we move our hips side to side because fascia isn't linear, it kind of spirals. So this way we get into the fascia also. Back to center. Now for yogis that want to maybe make this a little more interesting, you can always place your foot on top of the block, and that'll even give you even more sensations. Let's take 3 more deep inhales and exhales. If you have your foot on the block, remove your foot off the block and come back to our easy pose. And perhaps you can even notice here a little difference, a slight difference between your left and right hip. Breathe that in as you notice the difference. Take your right leg forward. Still bending at the knee, foot is flexed, and lead with your heel. Walk your hands forward, and then rock your hips side to side. As you walk your hands forward, Attempt not to round in your spine, but lengthen. So draw your chest towards the floor. You might even notice the difference between your left and right side. Walk your hands over the right leg and still walk your hips. Back to center. And remember, if you want to, you can always place your foot on top of the block to get a little more sensations. 3 more deep inhales and exhales. Come back to your easy pose so that way you can see if you feel a little difference in your hips. Take your legs straight, shake it out. Bring your feet close to your block. See how close you can bring it to the block, and keeping your feet maybe hip distance apart, chest up. Remove the block as you come to a seat. Open your feet a little bit wider, maybe than your mat, and shift your knees side to side. Next time your knees are to the right, you can use your hand, the back hand on the floor, to lift your hips. Take the hips back to the floor, shift to the other side, and then lift your hips off the floor. Let's do that a couple more times. We shift, lift, shift, and lift. One more on each side. Making your way back to center, let your knees just go side to side. Coming into child's pose. You can cross at your ankles, take your hands forward, and come into child's pose. Let your big toes touch, open knees wide, bring your hips back towards your heels, extend your arm. Even here, I personally like to move the hips just so I can notice if one side is tighter than the other. Taking your chest closer towards the floor. All fours, spread fingers wide, knees directly under your hips. You can either keep your toes curled under or you can point, whatever feels better. Just make some circles with your hips. Circles in the other direction. Come back to stillness. Now let your hips go over towards the right, and you look like you're trying to look at your right hip so you can feel a stretch in the left side of your body. Take your hips back towards your heels, and then switch sides. Take the hips over to the left, and you look at your left hip. towards your heels, switch sides. Hips go over towards the right. You look at your right hip. Take the hips back, hips to the left, and you look at your left hip. Hips back, and come back to all fours. Step your right leg or your left leg forward. Let's start left. So step your left leg forward. Curl your back toes and let your hips dip low. Notice that the knee is over the ankle. So we want to make sure that the knee is over the ankle. You can even take the foot even further forward, and the knee can be slightly behind the ankle. Allow your hips to dip low as you lift chest and shoulders away from your ears. With your next exhale, push your hips back, come into Hanumanasana, keeping your front knee bent. So it's a slight bend in the knee, because sometimes when we straighten, we do this. So we want to keep a slight bend to keep length into the spine. And then bend your left knee and let your hips dip low. Push hips back. Want to keep this right hip directly over your right knee. And take hips forward. Push hips back. Now stay back this time. Move your hips. With your left knee or your left foot, take it towards the little toe side of the foot. So I'm rotating down, getting a little external rotation into my left hip. And then walk your hands over your left leg. And you can always place your hands also onto your blocks. Stay here for a few breaths. And just notice the sensations you have in your left leg, if you have any. Turn the left foot up, bend your left knee, come back to our little low lunge. Now at any time, if this bothers your knee, you can always place a towel under your knee to protect your knee. Bring your hands onto your left leg as you allow your hips to dip low and lift chest. If you have blocks or your books, you can bring them to either side of your hand, placing your hands onto the blocks or the books. Right hand press into the block. As you take your left arm along your ear, feel the stretch in your spine. And then switch sides. So with this one, we're getting into psoas, this muscle that's right here, and also into iliopsoas, the front of the thigh. Come back to center. Move your blocks out of the way. As you straighten your back leg, bring the foot off the floor. Inhale. Exhale, straighten your left leg. Now lifting your left heel or left foot on the floor, pressing your heel into the floor. Bend your left knee. Right leg stepping behind your left leg. So it's crossing at the shins. Inhale, lift halfway. Exhale, fold. Start to bend both knees. So your left leg is in front. You're going to keep your left leg where it is with a bent knee as you let your right leg go over towards the side. So now I'm on the top of the foot on the right. But I'm still keeping my left knee bent. Right hand presses into the mat or into your blocks. Lift your left arm. Release your left hand to the floor. Swing your right leg behind you. Straighten both legs. Bring your hands to the inside of your front foot as you walk your torso to the center of your mat. Wide leg fold. Inhale, lift halfway. Exhale, deepen your fold. And then start to just move your hips side to side. Lift your torso halfway, walk your hands over towards the right foot. Bring your left knee to the mat. Inhale, lift chest. Exhale, push hips back, Hanuman. So keeping that slight bend in your left knee, taking your sit bones back to get length into your spine. Bend your right knee, take your chest forward. Exhale, push hips back. Inhale, bend knee. Exhale, push hips back. One more, bend knee. Exhale, push hips back. Stay here. Rotate the right toes, the little toe of the right foot onto the floor. Walk your hands over your right leg. Focusing on really deep inhales. So I'll turn this way so you can see what it looks like. Come back to center, lift your heel. Bend your right knee. Now if you have your blocks, now this is one of those that if you don't have blocks, you can still do it, but the blocks just help to bring the floor up towards the lift the floor rather. So you want to make sure your knee is directly over your ankle, or it can be slightly behind your ankle as you let your hips dip low. With the back foot, you can either keep the toes curled under or point, but let your hips dip low. Left hand presses onto the block as you take your right arm along your ear. Rotate your chest up towards the ceiling. Draw shoulders away from the ears. Switch sides, hands onto the block, left arm along your ear. And once again, you don't have to use the block. It just feels good to use the block, but you don't have to. Back to center. Walk your hands forward, curl the back toes under, lift your knee off the mat, and straighten your right leg, pressing the heel down into the mat. Notice what happens as you start to take your tailbone towards the back of your mat or the back of the room. Bend your right knee. Left leg steps behind the right. So it's crossing at your shins. Inhale, lift halfway. Exhale, fold forward. Now start to bend both knees. With your back leg, your left leg, step it out to the side, coming onto the top of your foot. Press your left hand into the floor as you lift your right arm. Swing your back leg out. Take both legs straight as you come back into your wide leg fold. Moving hip side to side. Back to center, turn your feet out, bend your knees, Bring your elbows to the inside of your knees, and you can use your elbows really more to the inside of your thighs. Use your elbows to press the knees out. Take deep breaths. Letting your knees go towards the little toe side of your feet, not towards the big toe side. To release, straighten your legs, turn your feet parallel, move your hips side to side. And begin to heel ball feet in towards each other. Stop when they're about hip distance apart, keeping your feet parallel. Sit your hips low as you come into Malasana. You can use your blocks, bringing your hands onto the blocks, or you can use your index finger, let your index finger touch the floor. Straighten your legs. And come back to Malasana. When you do, shift your weight in towards your heels. Coming up and down. Let's do 5 more. Last one. Stay in Malasana, chest up. Taking your hands behind you, come to a seat. Take legs straight, shake it out. Double pigeon. So with our double pigeon, let's start with the left foot on top. So we take the left foot past the knee to come into your double pigeon. So we call it double pigeon because we're bringing it shin to shin. So I'm not bringing the knee too close in. It's going right over the knee. And then the front foot goes a little bit further forward. So you have this equal sign with your shins. If this isn't available, you can always place a block in front of your right knee and place your left foot on top of the block. So don't get discouraged if your knee is really high. It's just after a while it'll start to come down. Keeping your feet dorsiflexed, lift your chest. Take deep breaths. So what you're doing is you're actually using the outside muscles of your legs to try to bring the knee closer towards the other shin. Keeping your shoulders over your hips, so not leaning back, but shoulders over hips. Top leg, swing it behind you. You can come into deer, where you have both knees bent, but you see I'm sitting on my right hip. So you can come into deer, or you can go into pigeon, taking the back leg straight behind you. Still sitting on your hip. And especially if you're in this variation of pigeon, rotate your left hip down. Then you walk your hands forward. Both hands may be going towards your foot, and then you release slightly away. Go towards your foot and release. One more towards your foot and release. You can bring your forearms onto the floor as you stay here for a few breaths. And you can always use your block also. Slowly release. Come back to center, shake it out. And then we switch sides. Left or right foot on top. Taking the bony part of your ankle past your knee so that way you're not digging into your knee. So take it past. Front foot goes forward, hands behind you, shoulders over hips. You can even come up onto your fingertips onto your back hands and take deep breaths. Keep your feet flexed or dorsiflexed. Focusing on your inhale, long inhale breath. Moving into deer or pigeon. So deer, both knees are bent and you stay right here. Or pigeon, you start to take your back leg behind you. Now I'm still sitting on my left hip. Begin to rotate your right hip down. Walk your hands forward. And then grab onto your foot, trying to bring your chest closer towards your foot. And then release. Foot and chest. Release. Last one, foot and chest. Release. You can walk your hands forward, coming with forearms onto the floor. Deep breath. Slowly come up, swing the legs forward, shake it out. Let's go for one more little hip opener, happy baby. So you come onto your back, take your knees wide. One variation to happy baby is to hold onto your shins as you bring the knees closer in towards your chest. Notice what happens with your hips. Keep your hips on the floor as much as you can and shoulders on the floor. Now, you are more than welcome to stay here, or you can reach and grab onto the arches of your feet. You can do it from the inside or outside. I've seen some people do it from the inside. I personally like holding from the outside. Don't let the hips rise up. Keep the hips on the floor, shoulders on the floor. Deep, deep inhales. You're welcome to stay in your happy baby, or you can grab onto your heels and maybe take legs wide. Still keeping your hips on the floor. Hug your knees in towards your chest. Rock side to side. As you very slowly make your way up to a seated position. Just like we start, you can sit back onto your block, bringing your heels close in towards your block. Let the knees fall out to the side. And then you can kind of see if you feel a little difference in your hips from that short little hip opening sequence. Thank you guys so much. I hope you have an awesome rest of your day or middle of your day or wherever part of the day you're in. Be blessed. The light in me bows to the light in each and every one of you. Namaste.